Hi there, I'm Ani Anderson from the Somatic Coaching Academy. I'm the Director of Operations there. You are either watching us live or recorded on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Wherever you're watching us, we encourage you to give us a like. And if you like what you see, share up this conversation. I'm really excited to be talking today about leadership with Brian. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Ronnie.
How are you?
How are you?
Today, we're talking about when the master leads, no one follows. So that right there sounds a little like, intriguing. I wonder what that's gonna be all about. I think this is a really intriguing time to be alive, Brian. There's so much change afoot, and change can be really scary for a lot of folks. There's that, and there's a lot of change afoot. It's like all of our systems are reformatting themselves, restructuring,
Mhm.
um, everything, from the way that we live family lives to the way that businesses run, our schools, our healthcare,
Yeah.
everything is in money, everything is in a massive um, innovation period. I use that word on purpose
Mm.
because innovation is a word that people like to use, you know? Sometimes we talk about change and we talk about it in scary ways, but like, let's just frame the conversation here for a second with a word that people like to use, like innovation. This is a really big time for innovation. And one of the things that I think it'd be really beneficial for us to talk about today is this idea that we used to prescribe to with leadership, that leadership was kind of like a top down
Mhm.
approach,
Right. Yeah.
right? How many people led. Now, I'm sure you experienced that growing up and in your early career and things like that. I mean, I sure did.
Yeah. It was really like somebody was in charge, right? It's like, someone's in charge and that person in charge tells everyone else what to do is kind of how I grew up in terms of the idea of leadership and all the structures, whether it was education or, and I come from both my family comes from both education and healthcare. And
Yeah,
so
right.
it's very close and dear to me. And that's where I kind of live too, right? It's in both of those places of education and healthcare. But both of those places were really this top down hierarchy type leadership model where there was somebody in charge and that person in charge held more power than anybody else in the organization. And they told everyone else what to do. And it really created this, this polarity, right? Really this kind of polarity where we talk about how leadership structure has been in the past and how it functions, and it just isn't working now. I think that's pretty obvious, right? I mean, talk about the last 2 years of the pandemic still going on.
Yeah.
Our political dysfunction in this country still going on, right? Money, just everything you said still going on, and obviously there's innovation required at this time in order to, as a human species, elevate our level or evolve. Let's say evolve our level of consciousness in order to meet the demands that we're facing right now. And I'm not sure this hierarchy, top-down leadership thing is it's not working and it's not gonna last. It's not gonna survive this.
Yeah, I agree. And if you know Brian and I, you know that we're big fans of metaphor. One of the reasons is because we're body mind experts. And when we work with the body, we can really look at where our body has symptomology and think to ourselves, metaphorically, what does that mean? And we can get so much insight into how to help solve problems. I mean, both of us were known as the people who could solve any problem the doctors would send all the difficult patients to. I don't know what's going on with you. You should go see these two. And we would figure things out through that means. And so I bring it up because I think this is really interesting metaphorically that we're talking about top down leadership,
Mhm.
because we also approach people and our physiology historically from the top down.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we play. You're absolutely right on. We place so much value on the intellect in our rational mind. And to be fair, as humans, we are unique in that regard of all animals on the planet. As far as we know, there's no other animal on the planet that can visualize their future and change behaviors today in order to create a different outcome in the future. Like, that's kind of uniquely human. But we give that part of our human experience so much power over what's driving the way that we're thinking about things anyway, which is more the bottom up kind of model.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny as we navigate the world of business in the somatic space, we find that there are even somatic practitioners that are more top down
Mhm.
or bottom up, they say. A person who will start with the psychology and then talk about the physiology, or a person who will talk about the physiology and then talk about the psychology. One of the interesting concepts I think that we've studied in Eastern medicine that's just been so impactful in my own life, and I know in yours too, is the idea of heart mind
Mhm.
in Chinese medicine. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, and as I talk about that, what I really appreciate about what we do at the Somatic Coaching Academy is we actually come from both directions. That's really the way that we think about accessing our authentic human beingness, whoever we are, is we come through both directions, both top down and bottom up simultaneously, in order to get to the core of the issues. So yeah, so the heart mind from Chinese medicine is the idea that that the heart actually, in the Chinese language or in these traditional Chinese methodologies, the heart isn't an organ all by itself. It's actually also the container for our personalities, for our belief systems, for the way that we operate through the world, for the way we think about things, even the way we feel about things. Even our kind of our karmic paradigms are kind of stored and connected within the heart organ itself, but also the energies that are associated with the heart. And as we start talking about these ideas of traditional Chinese medicine or where we are today, what I really think is important to consider on is this idea of interdependence. And when we talk about leadership, so what's going to happen when there's not somebody in charge anymore? Like, well, who's in charge? So if there's no hierarchy of leadership, well, who the hell's in charge? And who's making the decisions? And well, when we are in an interdependent construct, the fact is that the energy and information that people are sharing actually makes the decision.
Right.
Right? It's not an individual person anymore doing it. And really where we've been now, we've been kind of polarized. So if interdependence is in the middle, we've been polarized between independence and dependence. Do you know what I mean? I mean, so
Yeah.
we have such value on independence in this country, like such value, independence, the staunch, idealist, independent, I'm going to forge my own path kind of thing. And we all know law of polarity. If you've got independence, you also have to have dependence.
Mm-hmm.
You can never have one or the other. And whatever you have in one share, you have an equal the other share. So the way our organizations are built right now, with somebody at the top making decisions, and they're the most independent person, or entity in the organization, the more independence that they have, the more dependence everyone has underneath them. And it creates this tension between the two. And I think that's really what's unraveling right now, really what's coming apart.
I think as you're talking and I'm listening to, one of the things that's occurring to me is this seems like the obvious solution from an evolutionary point of view, where we would be people who really are dependent on each other for survival. And then we evolve into people who can be independent for survival. And so moving into interdependence next really makes sense. And I'm also thinking about how a lot of people would hear what we're talking about and be like totally freaked out. Like, you can't just let like the ideas and the information lead. Like, that is insanity. But the fact is that there are high performing companies who have done these things from a very practical standpoint who have been very successful. One of the companies that I think has been really ingenious and innovational is the oh, for crying out loud, let my people go surfing.
Oh yeah, Patagonia.
Patagonia. Thank you. Patagonia. Right? Like, what an interesting kind of idea. It's a very, especially at the time, a very different kind of way that the company was led. And I think had a lot of these elements within it. Like, there was information leading everybody,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I just want to close the loop to what you're talking about with the body mind too, Ani, which is just occurring to me right now is when we talk about the heart mind, right? We talk about the heart mind, it's centered in the heart area. But there's actually 3 energy centers when we talk about traditional Chinese medicine with what we call the 3 dantians. So there's the Jing dantian, which is the kind of associated with the body. And it's, sorry about that phone call coming through. And associated with the body, and then the heart mind associated with the heart, and then the Shen Dantian, which is associated with our connection to spirit, or our sense of autonomy or our sense of independence, right? And so what's really fascinating is that if we think about those hierarchical structures again, if we have so much value, like a lot of people have so much value on my independence, on my spiritual connection, on my capacity to do whatever I want. And I know we've both seen this. We both met a lot of people who operate from that functionality and their bodies are a wreck.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, their bodies keep reminding them that, hey, you're not independent.
Yeah, right.
Not independent. Like, I'm going to bring you back to earth and make you realize that you have a dependent here, and it's called your body. And the more that you try to get away from it or work through it, the more it's going to remind you. So the heart mind reminds us to be that there's interdependence within our body. And so just what you're saying too, the same dysfunction we see in organizations, we see in people's microcosm as well.
Yeah. And so you hear a lot out there about like lead from the heart, right? And that gets very fuzzy in terms of what does that mean when we think about Chinese medicine. One of the things that we understand is there's a lot going on in the heart mind, And so just saying lead from the heart, can be just a bumper sticker unless we actually know how to work with those energies like we do in the core centering program, one of our programs. People all the time have these massive awarenesses like, oh, I didn't know that there were tools. First of all, I didn't know there were tools to become calm and centered in the heart mind so that I can lead from that space. So, right. And there are, and it's utilizing both, like you said, that top down and that bottom up approach. There are, I'm thinking of some consultants that we work with who believe in this from an organizational standpoint and propote that when leadership consultants are going into organizations, they need to make sure that they're doing both that top down and that bottom up. This isn't a foreign concept. Right. Whereas I think that, 10 or 15 years ago, it used to be like, oh, I don't know. But now is the time to start to really bring these things forward, because it is the time in our evolution for us to start really integrating these things. It's really a time of integration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you make such a great point, Ani, because again, just like people have told us, like, I didn't realize there were tools to help to calm myself or bring myself back into a sense of interdependence. Those same tools are what actually create interdependence within organizations. Mm-hmm. So when we think about like who's going to make the decisions again, who's going to be the leader, and we talk about the energy and the information being the leader, that's the energy and the information that's cultivated amongst the people within the organization. Then that doesn't mean that there's not still going to be a CEO that reports to a board. But what it means is that the CEO is just another position within an organization. That the brain is no more important than the heart in our bodies, right? And I would just say the brain is probably no more important than our tiny little kidneys. So you lose 2 kidneys, you're done. You lose a kidney, you're on dialysis. I mean, so like there's all kinds of parts of our body that are just as important as our brain. Our brain doesn't get paid any more than anything else in our bodies. So the thing is that the core centering practitioner program, like what you mentioned before, the CCP program, is actually the tools to create the resonant and energetic connections amongst the people in the organization. That is the tool that does that in a way where people then develop a sense of interdependence, not codependence, interdependence amongst one another, to be able to make really powerful decisions to move an organization forward and to deliver the services in the world that it really needs to deliver.
The secret is this happens anyway, whether you're consciously using it or not is the thing. I mean, have you ever been in an organization or walked into a store or a company or something, and like, there's just this air of negativity, or maybe like a
Right.
family or community organization or something. There's this air of negativity, and you're like, I don't know if I like it here. Maybe you stay for a little while and you realize, like, wow, like the vibe around here is kind of off or negative, or just really don't like it. Every group has a vibe. Every group has an energetic, and the energetic's leading anyway, folks. So
Yep.
we can either cultivate the energetic within our communities, within our organizations, or we can just, unconsciously be led by whatever is happening anyway.
Mhm. Yeah.
I just want to also bring up that we've talked a little bit about organizations and things, and it's kind of a soapbox for us to bring up that there are so many folks who don't see themselves as leaders, who really have the opportunity, I think now, especially, to really step up and realize that a leader can be somebody who is a helper, who is just like a person who's in front of one other person. A leader can be a parent, it can be a therapist, it can be a coach, it can be a counselor, it can be a teacher. Like, these are folks who don't necessarily see themselves in leadership positions. However, the predominant energetic is going to lead in any group of people. And so it can be a person who is not necessarily, doesn't have the name badge or the
Yep.
thing on their desk that says leader, that can be leading. Actually, I have a really quick example of this. I was working with a small business, and there's probably about, I don't know, 15 employees or so. And there was this person who wasn't the leader, but she was leading the energetic of the
Mhm.
organization. Everybody could feel it. There were people who liked her, there were people who didn't like her. And she was a low person on the totem pole. And yet her energetic was totally leading the organization.
Mhm.
So it's just really want to be encouraging. And I'm not saying this from an inspirational standpoint. I'm saying this from a scientific standpoint, right?
Yep.
That any of us can be leaders. And actually, the more centered that we are, the more clear and centered and open we are, the better able we are to lead, whether it's one person, whether it's a group of, 5 or 10, or whether it's a whole big organization.
Yeah, that's a great point on it because, like it or not, actually, the most uh, the person with the most consistent energy in any organization, relationship, group, whatever, is the one who becomes the de facto leader.
Yeah.
So it's not like the person with the most optimistic person becomes a leader, and it's not necessarily that the most pessimistic person becomes the leader. It's whoever's the most consistent in their frequency that becomes the de facto leader, regardless of what their title is.
That's so important. We just have to take a pause and get a big highlighter
Mm.
and say that one again. The person with the most consistent energy, not the most positive, not the most negative. The person with the most consistent energy will lead.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and it could be the person who's most consistently and happen to be positive, or consistently happen to be negative, but it's there's no value judgments based on it really when you're talking about energy. The energy really doesn't care too much, or at all. It's really about the person that's the most consistent in their resonant frequency, and they will become the de facto tuning fork for the organization. So and again, this is science. We just know this is how it works scientifically. So what we're big proponents of is do that consciously. Actually decide then consciously the frequency that you want your organization to be in, and do that. Like, create that frequency on a regular basis. And then anyone else who comes into that organization will naturally attune to that frequency. So why not just do it on purpose?
Exactly. And you do that by using somatic tools.
Yep.
So I hope that this was helpful to those of you who are watching live and watching the recording. We love to hear your thoughts, insights, and wisdom. Please pop them in the comments. And of course, share this with somebody who needs to hear it. Because you may have thought of, oh, gosh, somebody needs to hear this. Share it up, share it up. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to the next time. Make sure to like and subscribe so you find out when we're going live. We'll see you next
All
time.
right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.